In preparation for the arrival of our new pastor, Dave Samelson, Pastor Kathi and Pastor Dave videotaped several conversations to begin to introduce Pastor Dave to our congregation. What we're going to see now is the third of 3 of these small conversation vignettes, and this will be the final one we'll see, because next week, as I mentioned earlier, he will be here with us in person. So if we can see the video now, please. Thank you.
Hi, Kathi.
Hi, Dave.
So tell me about the direction that you see this church moving in.
I can tell you about the direction that we've been moving in and where I think the trajectory of this church could well continue. We have tried many new things during the last 5 years. Not all of them have worked or been successful, but many of them have. I'm thinking about Front Porch, which is the ministry in Mountain View that Sam Lewis is in charge of and is doing a great job with. That's a ministry that takes a form that is not very much like traditional church. It's a dinner model. Every Sunday night, Sam gathers together in her driveway a group of people who are looking for community. What we thought early on was that there were a lot of people in this Mountain View, Los Altos area who may not be looking for church, but they are hurting for friends and for community. And so Front Porch is a place that says you don't have to come all the way into the church, just come to the front porch. And here you will find a new way of being together and a group of people that will welcome you no matter who you are and what you bring. I love that.
Yeah.
We've started an organization called Art Changes Us under the leadership of Carol DeMonte, which is about empowering young people through the art and the artistic creativeness that is inside of them already, helping them to sort of raise up those gifts and use them in a way that lets them know that the world values who they are and what they bring, and hopefully will help them see themselves as fuller of possibility than perhaps they knew before. We've been rebuilding children's ministry and youth's ministry using the same kinds of ideas of change making and raising up our young people to see themselves as compassion-driven change makers like Jesus. Through all of this, I think, we started really early in my time here with the Changemaker Initiative, this new thing that we really believed was a translation of the gospel for this place in the 21st century, a way of thinking about our faith in a way that connected to all the other things we do out in the world, and to invite change makers, compassion-driven change makers like Jesus, to take on that character and to be those people in whatever place they go every day, their work, their school, their neighborhoods, their communities. And I think that connection between the church and the world outside the church is the connection that this congregation makes more and more. So I see them continuing to experiment with that. To say, let's try this, and what if we did it a different way? And I've loved that about them. How does that kind of experimentation fit with you, who you are?
Innovation, risk-taking, the change maker. We're going to blow the time out a little bit this morning. All right, I got to tell you a story. So, 2016, I was appointed to Point Pleasant, and I had 2 years. The first 2 years, I was also a superintendent, and it was a church that had this huge debt, and it had been sort of gradually declining for about 7 years, and they were scared that the debt was going to overwhelm them, And so I'm I'd done some turnaround before in some churches, and I'm pretty good with money, and so it seemed like a good fit. So the appointment was made, and I went to my first ad council meeting that fall, so the fall of 2016, and I did what I always do, doing crunching the numbers, doing a demographic analysis. Do that a lot. I'm pretty good at it, and so I did it at the church, and it looked like a bell curve, but that downward and was longer than I had expected. And funny thing happened. It freaked me out. And so I presented to them, but that night I went into this downward spiral. I can't, this is beyond me. The things that I can do don't work as well as they used to. I can't do it. I just can't do it. And I didn't sleep that night. I'm a 6 on the Enneagram. I get into this sort of death spiral as far as thinking, and the next day, I had to go to Church of the Resurrection for a church renewal workshop, and I didn't get any sleep at all. And I had to get up, dog tired, and I'm driving to the airport, and I get a call from a colleague and also a pastor of one of the churches I serve as superintendent, and she said, I just went to this workshop, and it was by this guy named Todd Bolsinger, and he wrote a book. You got to read this book. It's called Canoeing the Mountains. It's a crazy name. It's a crazy story. I know you love crazy stories. I'm not going to try to tell you what it's all about. It's wild and crazy. You'll love it. Read the book. Read the book. So I get to the airport. I'm going to have 5.5 hours before I land in Kansas City. And so I download the book onto my phone on Kindle, and I read the book. As the plane is landing, I'm finishing up. I start about as low as I had been for maybe a couple years. And I got off the plane, I was like 2 feet in the air. Yeah. It just transformed me. I mean, the book is built around a scripture from Romans 12. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed. There's what we're looking for, right? Transformation. By the renewing of your mind. That's what the book's about, the renewing of your mind. A new way of thinking. And until that new way of thinking, the last part never happens. Then you will be able to discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, perfect. No new way of thinking, none of that happens. And so really the book's about just a new way of thinking. And he's kind of this weird pastor who loves history, and he got enthralled with the Lewis and Clark expedition and gets deep into it. And I thought I knew a little bit, but I didn't know that much about it. And, they were looking for a water route to the Pacific, and they were going to canoe up the Missouri River to the end of the Missouri River, and then they were going to go over a little hill. There was no map, but they figured there's a little hill, and then they were going to hit the headwaters of the Columbia, and they were going to canoe the rest of the way. And that was their plan. That's what they set up for. So they go up the river, and they get to the end of the Missouri River, and that little hill turns out to be the Rocky Mountains. So their plan is shot. And here's how he describes it in the book. He says, as he stepped off the map, they're off the map, there's no map, into uncharted territory, Meriwether Lewis discovered that what was in front of him, the Rocky Mountains, was nothing like what was behind him, the Missouri River. And that which had brought him to this point in the journey would take him no further. Lewis faced a daunting decision. What would he do now? Lewis and Clark, their Corps of Discovery, were looking for a water route, but now they had run out of water. How do you canoe over mountains? What he says is basically they had this binary choice. And really the truth is, this is the binary choice we're all faced with. Mm-hmm. If we want to do what we've always done, that means canoeing in water, we have to turn around and go back. That's only that's where the water is. Or we can go forward, and here's the key word, on an adventure. Mm-hmm. An adventure. Adventures are off the map. Adventures are hard. They take unbelievable sacrifice. They often happen with powerful community being essential for that. But adventures are wonderful. I love adventures. When I was 36, I climbed Mount Shasta and did it every year thereafter for a dozen years. I love adventures. The harder, the better. This just captivated me. He shares another quote from Ed Friedman. in the book, conceptually stuck systems. Doesn't that sound like the church? Cannot become unstuck simply by trying harder. That's what we always do. For a fundamental reorientation to occur, a spirit of adventure must happen first. So I got back and I realized that's the only way we're going to find a way forward at Point Pleasant is it's got to be an adventure. And really that's what we've done at Point Pleasant. The only things we do in terms of great big projects have to be part of that adventure. And so we turn the debt into an adventure. We call it Legacy of Love. And the interesting thing is that probably only a third of the congregation directly have given to that, but the whole congregation owns the adventure and celebrates the adventure. We did a midweek program, gathering of the church with a meal. Again, probably only a third of the congregation, but the whole church owns it and celebrates the adventure. So here's the mea culpa. So when I got the call about coming here, right, I crunched the numbers. I had my dark night of the soul. Who am I? This is way over my head. There's no way that I can. I'm just this half Jewish kid from Alameda. There's no way that I'm going to be able to do what is needed. Following people like you and others that I admire so much. And the turning point was our first Zoom. And during that Zoom, we pretty much talked about Changemaker Initiative. You talked about that. You probably didn't see it, but my eyes welled up with tears repeatedly through our Zoom. What an incredible adventure. That's the sort of adventure you die for. And you know, and it's not like the whole church has to do individual projects, but the whole church can own that adventure and the innovation and the things that happen out of it. And suddenly I was out of my death spiral and I was through my dark night of the soul, and suddenly I was more excited than ever. So how do I feel about it? We're going to canoe the mountains.
Yeah.
We're going to canoe the mountains. I'm excited.
Dave, at the end of every worship service, when I bless people, I use this phrase and I bless you with it. May God give you grace to risk something big for something good. And you will, I know.
Thank you
for coming.
Thank you.